I think this week will be the week where I start felting a couple of things. A tiny bit less practical, but it is just as cute. If not, I'm trying to like find more and more motivational ways to get through these slippers, because I'm going to be making, I think, 45 of them. So I'm not the biggest fan of Sandnes Garn Sunday. This is the very tiny start to my dream dress. Hi! Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Oline and I'm a knitter from Norway, and welcome to my knitting podcast. Here I talk about all things knitting, current projects, finished projects, planned projects. I do talk a fair bit about all of my yarn, just anything that pops into my head while we sit here and chat. Thank you so much for coming to hang out with me this week. I've had a great week in terms of knitting. I really felt I got somewhere with a lot of my whips this week, and it's felt so great to finally have a week like that. So I'm so excited to share that with you. But before we head into all of that, I wanted to talk a little bit about what I'm wearing. And this is also actually one of the projects I was able to finish this week. This is my square neck camisole. This was also my birthday knit. I cast it on my birthday. This has been my third year in a row doing a birthday knit, either casting on or casting off something on my birthday. This year I cast something on, and this was it. As I said, this is the square neck camisole. The pattern is by Garnogslikt, and I ended up using Knitting for Olive Merino. I haven't used Knitting for Olive Merino that much because it is way out of my budget really when I'm buying yarn. But I got a lot of Knitting for Olive Merino a year and a half ago, almost now, and I've been trying to figure out what to do with some of that. And in this color, this I think is called Dusty Petroleum's Blue, I got 2 skeins in this, so I thought a summery camisole pattern would be perfect for this. Unfortunately, I did not read the pattern and the yarn measurements before I started, so I did end up running a little bit low on yarn. I knit the size medium, and I definitely did not get the length I was supposed to get, but I did manage to finish all of the decreases here. If you can see those, I did manage to finish all of those, but it is definitely very cropped, as you can see. But I've worn it. I finished this earlier this week, and I've worn it for half a week now, and for me and my wear, it does not really bother me that it's short. I love this top. I love the fit of it. I love knitting it up, except for all of the double knitting. I'm not a big fan of double knitting, but it was worth it in the end, and it's turned into such a wearable top and such a lovely top. So I'm definitely going to knit this again. So I think I'm fine with this being cropped. I still get a lot of use out of it, more than most of my other summer knits that are not cropped. And then I think in the future I'll make another one, and I'll just make sure that I have enough yarn to make that full length. So I'll have both, but that is my square neck camisole, and I ended up using exactly 100 grams knitting this because that was all that I had. I had this much left once I was finished binding off, and I actually had to frog my bind off once because I'd knit one more row after the decreases because I thought I had enough yarn to do that, and then I got halfway through the decreases and ran out of yarn, so had to frog all my not decreases but all my cast, every stitch that I've cast off I had to frog that. And then I had to frog a whole row, and then I had to start casting off again. But in the end, it did work out. This is also pre-blocking, so it might have a little bit of growth in it. This is knit in merino, so I think I could block it out a little bit. But I also don't I don't want to mess with the ribbing because I'm afraid that will stretch out too much and be too wide. It's already a bit stretchy up here, so if I pull on it too much it goes a bit low, so I don't want it to grow anymore except from exactly this area here, in length. So we'll see how brave I am when it comes to blocking, or if I'm just very careful when it comes to this top. But I love it, it's amazing. I finally finished it this week, and I highly recommend this pattern. It was so much fun. But now we can move into everything else I did this week, and I think this week will start off with my finished projects because there are quite a few of them, and I think we'll go in order from what I finished first and then everything I finished after that. So the first project I finished this week was a project I was 100% certain I was going to be able to finish this week, and that was this sitting mat. This is going to be felted, and I'm also going to needle felt initials into this, so it's not 100% done, but the knitting part very much is. I finished this the same day that I podcasted last week, just that evening. It is really quick to knit up. It's on 5.5mm needles, and I knit this in Drops Nepal in the color Raspberry Rose, and I used 150 grams of yarn, so this just flew by. I knit on it that evening and finished it. Still haven't gotten around to felting, but I've gotten a lot closer, prepared myself, read up on it, and I think this week will be the week where I start felting a couple of things. I'm not going to felt everything I have ready to felt, but I'm going to felt this and a few slippers, I think. But this was the first project I finished, and it was really nice to start this week finishing a project right off the get-go, because my goal this week was to finish as many projects as possible so I could get to a point where I could start casting on new things again. So finished this. Then the next thing I finished, I'm glad I finished it, but this also kind of doesn't count towards my finished projects because it was also a new cast on this week. I've had this yarn. This is Drops Air. It's the leftovers after my sorbet sweater that I knit earlier this summer, and I've had these two skeins just staring at me. They've been back here in my summer box, and I've been looking at them every day and thinking about what I can make with them and itching to make something with them. And then I thought I could make a Selmas sleepsuit, but I only have two skeins, so I decided to make a Selmas sleep jacket, kind of. So it still has the really cute hood, which is one of my favorite parts. And then I knit it like the regular Selmas sleepsuit, just without the legs and also without the cuffs. I didn't think it necessary to do the cuffs since I wasn't going to do the legs, so it won't be that like warm, snuggly sleeping suit. So since it was going to lose quite a few of those qualities, I decided against the cuffs because I hate sewing them on, and I also did not have that much yarn. I was able to get just about the right length, and this is all the yarn I had left when I cast off. This would not be enough to do another round anywhere, so I'm really happy with this project from my stash as well. I'm really happy I've been able to finish so many projects where the yarn has been from stash, and I've been able to get 100% of the yarn out of my stash, like this top and also this now. Now I have two less yarn qualities out of my stash and there's no scraps left after them. So this is the little Selmas sleep jacket. I think it looks so cool, and I think I love the Selmas sleepsuit. I don't love knitting it up because of the sleeves and legs. Here I didn't have that much of it because I only did sleeves, and this is also the smallest size, 0 to 3, so I didn't get that tired of it. Also didn't have to do cuffs, but the Selmas sleepsuit is my absolute favorite pattern for babies because it is so usable here. I think this will be a tiny bit less practical, but it is just as cute, if not cuter, and I think the hood makes it a tiny bit more practical. It would still be great if you're for like a bit colder, no, a bit warmer weather than the Selma sleepsuit, where you don't want to dress the whole kid in wool, just a little bit, and it's just really cute. And I also got some scrap yarn out of my stash, so that was a really fun project, but as I said, it doesn't really count towards my finished projects because I didn't get any less whips after having finished this because it was also a new cast on this week. So didn't help, but was really fun, and it helped me decrease my stash, which is also an ongoing project I have. And then the next finished project was already kind of a current whip, but I did cast it on this week. But knitting slippers, just all of the slippers are an ongoing working project until I have them all done. So no matter how many slippers I finish, I'm not going to get any less whips until they're all finished. But I did finish this pair. This is also in Raspberry Rose. My goal right now is to get rid of this color. I'm trying to like find more and more motivational ways to get through these slippers, because I'm going to be making, I think, 45 of them, so I need some outside motivation to kind of help me get through. So my motivation right now is to knit 2 families, so I can kind of eliminate whole families from my to-do list, and also eliminate yarn colors, so I can eliminate whole yarn colors from my to-do list. I have already eliminated one color, the forest color, and I'm 3 skeins away from eliminating this color now, just 1 pair of slippers. I'm really excited about that. And then after this I cast on another pair of slippers, which I'm about halfway done with now. I'll show them. And after those slippers I'll also be done with this family. So I feel like I'm making good progress, since I have divided the whole like slipper project, which is huge. I've divided that into so many like tiny goals, which feels great. It's keeping me really motivated, and also not knitting on these all of the time, but having like, I knit on these from Wednesday until I podcast. That is like a very clear guideline, so it keeps me motivated, it keeps me focused, and I've really been enjoying it. These are knit in size 38 to 39, so one of the bigger ones, but not the biggest ones. And I think I used 175 grams for this. And the way it looks right now, it looks like I'm going to have enough yarn in this Raspberry Rose to do slippers for everyone, even if I borrowed a bit of the yarn to make a felted sitting mat, because I found some other Nepal in my stash in a beige color that I think will work better for one of the persons that were going to get Raspberry Rose. But yeah, that's a finished pair, and I think this makes for 20% finished of the whole goal as well, which feels like a really good percentage to be at in July, to be 20% done with all our Christmas gifts. So that's these slippers, and then the slippers I started on. I did also cheat a little bit this week, and I have worked on other projects than just slippers during the time from Wednesday until now, so I could probably have gotten more done, but I also wanted to work on other projects, but I still got a fair bit done, finished 1 pair, and I'm almost done with the first slipper in a new pair, and this is the last slipper pair for that family. Then that's 5 slippers for that family, and then done. These I think are in size 29 to 30, and the color is olive. Olive is a color I have a lot of skeins in, so I don't think I'm going to move to olive after I've done the Raspberry Rose color. I'm trying to move through families, but I'm also trying to move through families which have a lot of colors in the colors, a lot of slippers knit in the colors I have few skeins of. But to finish this family I had to tap into the olive colorway, even though I think that's the one I have the most skeins in. But yeah, here it is. I just have like the toe left on this one, but I ran out of the first skein. So that's almost done. And yeah, I feel pretty good about the slipper project. I definitely could be doing better if I did slippers for more of the time. Only knitting slippers from like midday Wednesday until early morning Friday. It doesn't give me a lot of time each week to do slippers, but it gives me enough time to finish like 1.5 slipper pairs every week, and that keeps me on track, and it also frees up a lot of time for me to work on other projects, so I make sure I don't grow tired of the slippers, because the worst case scenario with these slippers is if I get like the ick from them and I don't want to touch them anymore. If I lose all of my knitting mojo, that would be way worse than knitting them a bit like ineffectively like I'm doing now, just here and there. But I'm keeping my motivation every time it's Wednesday. I'm really excited to get back to knitting on my slippers, so for now, that's definitely the way to go. And if I get to like October, November, and I start to feel stressed and want to finish them at a quicker pace, I will still be able to finish them at a quicker pace then with tons of time left, because I've already done 20%, so that's just a bonus really. And then whenever I start to feel stressed, I can just knit slippers with more of my time, and hopefully I will still have kept my motivation up until that point, so it will be easier to knit a ton when that kicks in. But that's the slipper project this week, and then we can start to move into my whips. I think that's everything that I finished. Then we can move into my whips, and I have a whip that's almost finished. If I had done this podcast like an hour later today, this would have been counted amongst the finished knits. And this is the Synnedrakt, which I'm knitting for my friend and her baby. I knit her a Synnedrakt for her baby shower and she fell in love. So the last time I visited her, she gave me some yarn to knit her a new one, this time in the size 12 months, 1 year. So I've done that, and it is all done except from the border around the legs here. And I also, of course, have not weaved in ends or done buttons. I haven't done that for any. Honestly, with this one, I'm thinking if I do all of the knitting, I can give it to her without buttons and the ends weaved in, and then she can do that because I have done all of the knitting for her. But here it is. I did steam it a little bit before this podcast, just so the ruffle would really get to shine, because before I steamed it, it was just curled up like this. So I wanted you to be able to see how the ruffle looks now. Also, this is knit in Sandnes Garn Sunday, and I'm not the biggest fan of Sandnes Garn Sunday. It isn't that great to knit with, and the stitches get so uneven when I knit with it. It's just not my favorite experience. The yarn feels very stringy and like it could break any second. I'm just not the biggest fan, but the stitches did even out a lot when I steamed them. But I'm not going to be knitting a lot in Sandnes Garn Sunday for myself or my family. It's not going to become a yarn I buy a lot. This yarn is also from the Sandnes Garn factory, so I did encounter quite a few knots while knitting this up, but I have knit in Sandnes Garn Sunday both from the outlet and not from the outlet, and it's not my favorite either way. But here is the Synnedrakt. I think it's really cute. It also has an opening back here that needs a button. I think I've talked about this a lot before, but I really like the construction of this, where you start with this frill here and then you do an I-cord and pick up for like the top yoke and do decreases, and then underneath here you pick up and do increases until you separate for sleeve, and then you do a lot of increases here to make it like a kind of balloon shaped onesie romper. I don't know what to call it. So here it is, very, very, very close to being finished. So I'm almost counting that with my finished projects, and I am really happy with the amount of projects I was able to finish this week, both in terms of getting some yarn out of my stash. This doesn't count really towards that because it wasn't yarn from my stash. But I did get quite a lot of yarn out of my stash, and I did get rid of quite a few whips from like my long line list of whips. But even after I finished all of this, I counted through them and I think I still have 7 whips, which honestly surprised me after having finished 4 projects, I think. So could have been better, but I am really happy I was able to finish as many projects as I were, and now that I've done that and seen how many projects I can finish in quite a short amount of time, it's going to be much easier to keep up with that and take a week just focusing on that every now and then, so I actually will get through all of my whips. But I know in that whip number, those 7 whips, that I'm not really counting all of them because some of them have been truly abandoned and will stay that way until after summer, because I'm not going to pick up my Christmas sweater during summer, and I think I've also gotten to the point where I think the Dawn to Dusk jacket will have to wait until at least late April, where the weather isn't really warm now, but I want to focus on summer knits and like more summery knits until it's more full time again. So out of those 7 whips, there are quite a few that I'm just not working on at the moment, so that makes it a bit better, but not really. But that's one of the projects I worked a lot on this week to try to get finished. And then what other project? I did start on my dream project. I thought after having finished 4 projects, I should be allowed to cast on my dream dress. That's why I've been so busy trying to finish projects this week, so I could be able to cast this on. And I thought after having finished 4 projects that this was a great reward, and also to try to keep myself motivated. There's so much yarn here, but here it is. This is the very tiny start to my dream dress that's based on Camisole No9. So right now this is just Camisole No9, the start to Camisole No9. It's not going to turn into a dress for some time. I don't know how long it's going to take me, but quite some time. But this is the front yoke. I've done the straps and the increases and connected in the front here. I still have quite a bit of knitting to do on the front and then the back and then connecting, and there's a lot left, but I did get to all of this in just one evening, a couple of hours one evening, so I'm really happy with my progress so far. But I am knitting this in Knitting for Olive Pure Silk. This was a huge splurge for me because I really wanted to get the drape that you only get with silk. So I decided to go for that, even though I was a bit on the fence because I know from before that my knitting experience isn't the best. And then I started knitting on this. I knit a swatch and I started knitting on this, and I was pleasantly surprised. The yarn definitely does split a lot, and that bothers me a little bit because I split yarn when I knit to begin with, even if the yarn isn't super splitty. So I struggled a lot with this, and I definitely have to slow down my knitting a bit to make sure that I don't split the yarn too much. But other than that, I was pleasantly surprised until I got to about this point and my hand started hurting so much. It was like cramping, it hurt. I just had to put it down immediately because my hands hurt so much, and that never happens on 3mm needles. I've knit a lot on 3mm needles. I've knit so many baby knits, and most of this week I also was knitting on 3mm needles for the Synnedrakt, no issues, and I knit on this for 3 hours and it felt like my hand was going to fall off. So I think that's the pure silk, since I've knit so much with other yarn qualities on 3mm needles. Usually I only get this feeling in my hand, and not this intensely, if I'm knitting on like 8mm needles or up. So it was a bit weird, but I stopped and it felt fine afterwards. I haven't started knitting again, but I think if I can knit in 3-hour increments before my hand starts hurting, I'll still be fine, but it definitely is harder on my hands than most other types of yarn. So hopefully the drape will be worth it. But yeah, so far I'm really happy, and this color makes me so happy to look at, and just this whole project, knowing what it's going to turn into, it's making me so happy. I can't wait to see this progress. I'm just super excited about it. So that is my new cast on this week, so that upped my number of whips again, but this was the whole point of decreasing my whips, so I would be able to cast this on. This is definitely going to be my focus moving forwards, because this is going to be a floor length dress, fingers crossed, and I really want to have it finished this summer so I'll be able to wear it, because it is in silk, so it's not super wearable in winter, so it's going to be our main focus. So I'll actually get somewhere with it this summer, I might also, if I kind of run out of time, I think I might cast it off before it's floor length this year so I can use it some, and then undo that and knit it to floor length at a later point. But my goal is floor length this summer, so this is going to be a main priority, and then I'm going to try to finish my whips in between there. This one is definitely getting finished this week just because there's so little left. And then I still have this blanket, and I have not found yarn for it this week. Hopefully I'll be able to find yarn for it next week if I have less plans. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed for that, because that means 2 less whips also. And then I think the rest of my whips are quite long-term whips. I have the Korsvika jacket junior that I also hope to finish, but I think those 3 projects are the only ones I'll realistically be able to finish. And then this one, and then I think after those projects that I mentioned that there are 3 more, but those I'm not going to be able to finish those anytime soon. So I have a lot of projects, and I'm not really on top of all of my projects, but I don't feel as stressed this week as I did last week, because I have been able to get through a few of them. I feel more on top of it, and also after this week I realized that if I just sit down and knit on my already existing whips, I will be able to get through them rather quickly. I just have to actually prioritize it, but moving forwards now I want to prioritize this, so I'm going to let myself prioritize this. Yeah, but I think that's really everything I've been doing this week. Mostly just focusing on finishing projects, taking my knitting with me wherever I've been. Yeah, so that was everything I had this week. I hope you enjoyed me rambling on about all of my knits. If you did, please leave a like and a comment. That means the absolute world to me. And if you want to see more from me, please subscribe. Bye!